Story 1. Photography. I have a closet full of thousands of dollars worth of equipment that one of my children will inherit. Story 2. Bowling. I'm terrible at it, but I love it. It used to be good, cheap fun. I would hit the lanes every week with my cousin, and we could bowl all night for only $20, maybe $30 if we got snacks and drinks. During the pandemic, large chains bought out many local, family-owned bowling alleys and significantly changed them for the worse. Now, you can't just walk in, you have to make a reservation. So no more spontaneous, "Hey, I'm bored. Want to go bowling?" Additionally, it now costs $30 per hour for a lane. That may be a good deal for a large group, but it's really expensive if you're alone or with just one other person. I dusted off the old game console. Story 3. Geocaching reached a point where I had found all the caches within a 30-mile radius, and it wasn't realistic to go further since I wasn't old enough to drive. Now that I am about to get my license, I am planning to pick it back up again. Story 4. ADHD can be challenging. Engaging activities include knitting, crocheting, jewelry making, wood carving, weaving, skateboarding, drawing, and baking. Story 5. Someone already mentioned it, but video games are my focus. I'm not sure what it is about me, but I can only seem to engage with games where I have to put in a lot of effort and grind. I just don't have the energy to pursue a video game like that anymore, whether it involves technical skill in Super Smash Bros., aim training in Counter-Strike, or grinding a character in a role-playing game. I would love to play more relaxing games, but if I can't put in serious effort, it's not enjoyable, and I can't bring myself to get into another game like that. Story 6. Tough Mudder and Spartan races were enjoyable for me because they provided a sense of accomplishment. However, I was informed that I was spending too much time away from my family, even though I only raced every other month. I grew weary of the comments, so I decided to stop. Now, I find myself at home watching television and feeling unproductive. Story 7. Warhammer 40,000. I still read the books, but I have no time for painting and spending an entire day on a single game. Story 8. Long walks in the neighborhood used to be easy. As a child, I could walk 5 miles without encountering anyone. Now, I can't even walk past my driveway without multiple cars stopping, random men following me, and running into aggressive dogs. My area has transitioned from rural to highly populated, with the nearest store now just 15 minutes away and over 5,000 new homes added to the area. Story 9. Skateboarding. I practiced it throughout high school and college, but those injuries are really catching up to me. Story 10. Dancing. I have a genetic health condition that affects collagen production in my body and causes severe pain. I love dancing and watching people dance, but my body no longer feels like my own. Story 11. Working out, including lifting and cross-training, was very important to me for several years. Then depression hit me hard. I am gradually becoming more active now by walking, and I want to work out. Feels like I have completely lost my motivation. Story 12. Pen paling. I picked it up during COVID. I got a variety of cute stationery and goodies to stuff envelopes. Now, I only use that stationery to customize the envelopes of birthday cards for my friends. Story 13. Currently, my art. For some reason, while I've been pregnant, it's been very hard to have any hobbies. Not doing art makes me sad, but I cannot find the motivation or energy to do it. I hope that changes after I give birth. Story 14. Collecting and playing trading card games was enjoyable, especially during game nights with friends, but it turned out to be a money pit. Fortunately, as some friends moved too far away to gather regularly, we gradually grew out of it. Opening packs became addictive, so while it's bittersweet to not have a Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh night each week, not having friends to gently pressure me into buying packs has helped ease off the habit. Story 15. Drawing. I used to draw all the time and was really good at portraits. During high school art class, my teacher saw my drawing of Eminem and wanted to display it in the hallway. I was excited and gave him the picture. The next day, it wasn't in the display case, and at the end of class, I found it in the trash. I was so heartbroken that I stopped drawing after the semester. I try to get back into it, but I always think of that incident and end up stopping. Story 16. I have been playing bass for a long time, but I had poor technique and a limited understanding of music theory and the role of bass in music. My bass still sits unused, but I know I will pick it up again soon, as I have recently started playing guitar and drums again. Story 17. I used to be a big fan of anime as a child and continued to enjoy it into my adulthood. However, over time, my interest in anime diminished. I'm not sure why. Perhaps it was part of maturing. I have tried to get back into it, but I find that I cannot. Occasionally, I still watch a Studio Ghibli film. Story 18. Photography. I left the church where I was involved, and life presented me with challenging obstacles. My chronic illnesses worsened. It still brings me joy, but I rarely leave the house and no longer have the emotional energy for it. Story 19. Cars are the most expensive hobby I have ever had, and the car community can be some of the most judgmental and toxic people to be around. Some individuals base their entire personality on the idea that my car is faster than yours. This attitude drove me away from cars, and now I am interested in firearms, which surprisingly has a very welcoming and respectful community. Story 20. Video games used to take up 6 hours of each day. I haven't touched a game in a year, and I have been doing so much more since. Story 21. Watercolor painting was enjoyable. Unfortunately, I am currently more inclined towards reading, gaming, and mindlessly scrolling through social media. Story 22. What are hobbies? I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. But in all seriousness, I enjoy choir singing. Life is too hectic to commit to rehearsals right now, but I hope to rejoin when the kids are older. Story 23. Photography and cars were my passions. I lost my motivation when my dad passed away. He was always my biggest supporter when it came to my photography, though he was less enthusiastic about modifying my cars. Story 24. Painting has become quite boring over time. I used to love it, but the older I get, the less it fulfills me. Story 25. Honestly, I don't know if I've ever had a hobby. To be honest, it sounds silly, but I feel like it's true in my case. Story 26. Customizing toy cars involves repainting them, creating rolling cars, painting the interiors, and changing the wheels or installing accessories. Story 27. I swapped traditional painting for digital art. There's nothing wrong with painting. I simply prefer digital as a medium. Story 28. I stopped having desires and fantasies, and now I'm experiencing everything on my bucket list of debauchery. Guess what was first? I had a threesome with a couple, and he is bisexual. It was an incredible time. What's next? Any suggestions? Story 29. Bar. I don't think I ever actually liked it, so I just stopped. It was the trendy thing to do at the time. Story 30. Magic. The Gathering. I got back into it as an adult and really enjoyed it, especially having money to spend on good cards. When my first child was born, I went from playing at my local store every week to once or twice a month after a 6-month break. Then the pandemic hit, which ended in-person play. I found that without in-person play, I lost interest in playing online. After my daughter was born, that was the end of it. However, my girlfriend wants me to teach her how to play, so maybe I'll get back into it. I doubt I will return to competitive play, though. I don't think I have the time or money to make that work anymore. Story 31. Quilting, knitting, and sewing have been my hobbies. I used to rescue cats, and now I have many of them. Unfortunately, they do not align well with my textile activities. Fortunately, I still enjoy gardening, writing, and taking care of houseplants. Story 32. I used to be incredibly good at drawing, but I became bored with it. I spent 12 hours on one of my best drawings and messed up one tiny detail, which broke the focus I had. I realized that my hand hurt and I was really bored. Story 33. Dressing up in Japanese street fashion and subculture became too expensive. Additionally, my tastes have changed slightly. I still admire those who follow the trends. I really miss it. Story 34. I used to enjoy going to yard sales and always looked for unusual items. I even had a consignment booth for years. Then COVID-19 hit, and I had to close my shop. Work, home life, and social media have kind of diminished the popularity of yard sales in my area. Story 35. painting and crafting. I also create fondant cakes, but since my first child was born, I stopped everything to be with my family. Story 36. Comics. Since I had my son, I no longer have time to read as I used to. I had to cancel all of my subscriptions at the local shop. Story 37. Drawing. I reached a skill level where a professional asked me where I had been published. Not even asking if I was published, which I am not. However, there are only so many things to draw, and since it's not my profession, I lack motivation to continue. I still doodle, and my wife gets upset if she sees any of them in the trash, but that's about it. Story 38. Playwriting. People always had wonderful things to say about the productions, but I became too emotionally invested in ways that were not healthy for me. Story 39. I sold my last guitar for $800. It was an LTD M1000 FMT. My dream guitar is a Gibson Gold Top or a Slash Signature model. Life happened and I needed money. I haven't had the financial means to acquire either. Hopefully someday. Story 40. I haven't been rock climbing, mountain biking, backpacking, or camping in years. I am mostly done with skiing and snowboarding, but I feel like I could do any of those activities at a moment's notice, although it would require a significant investment in new gear. So I guess those are finished for now. Story 41. Guitar. The sound does not entice me anymore. I probably just need new strings or new songs, but it has been years. Story 42. Saltwater aquariums can become quite expensive quickly when you start purchasing coral, and you risk losing everything due to a single power outage. Story 43. Competitive programming presents challenges with some concepts being difficult to grasp, which can be frustrating. Engaging in programming at work takes away the joy of doing it in my spare time. Story 44. I stopped lifting weights after realizing how ableist and misogynistic the weightlifting community is. My muscles may be smaller, but at least I never have to associate with toxic individuals again. Story 45. Paintball. I started playing during the golden age, and one of my good friends owned a paintball store. I knew everyone in the area and almost never paid at Fields or the paintball store because I did so many favors. I still have a stack of passes. I was on 3 different teams at my best. Even when the aggressive players started showing up about 20 years ago, I began playing stock class and still had a great time. Little by little, the field started closing down. The renegade scene disappeared. My friend's store had to close, and my health began to deteriorate. Now, I have a basement full of rare vintage guns and equipment, but I have nowhere to play or I just physically can't. There is a Nelspot 007, heavily modified 35 years ago with rare period-correct parts, a Carter Buzzard in a unique color combination, a Mint KP2, and a fully splashed level 10 Hyperframe Automag with a warp feed that has never been fired. I could play with a different gun every week for a year. To be honest, it makes me a bit depressed. It was my favorite thing to do for a large part of my life. Story 46. I tried to learn how to crochet, but it didn't go well, so I gave up. Cross-stitching is on a brief pause until I get my office painted. Dungeons & Dragons has been on a long break, lasting multiple years with no end in sight, primarily because I can't find anyone who wants to play the same type of game as I do, along with scheduling conflicts. Story 47. Cosplaying was challenging due to the toxicity of the community, particularly my local group, which diminished the overall experience. Story 48. Drinking beer, smoking cigarettes, and rewatching old television shows and movies in my personal space used to be enjoyable. That was part of one bay in the garage. It became too expensive to smoke, and gout ruled out alcohol. I abandoned my personal space as the smell of stale smoke became unbearable. Story 49. I find myself disappointed with these answers. Hobbies used to feel more specific or unique. Maybe I'm just crazy. For instance, I am a crafty person. I still engage in many crafts and excel at the things I try. It's always just for fun. However, when I was younger, I was specifically into making cards, notes, and scrapbook pages. My go-to company was Stampin' Up. I don't do that anymore. Story 50. Film photography was my passion, but once I finished school, I no longer had access to a darkroom. I never fell in love with digital photography the way I did with film. I still miss it, but not enough to justify the expense of building my own darkroom. Story 51. Taekwondo. I was a red-black belt at around 12 years old, but my mom said I wouldn't be promoted to black belt until I turned 18, so she suggested I quit. Being the kind of kid who listened to everyone but myself, I complied. Every time I bring it up, my mom insists that I quit on my own decision. Chess. I played competitively, but high school was very stressful for me. Violin. I moved to a different state for university, and it seemed impossible for me to take it with me. Additionally, there would be no place for me to play it. Story 52. Electronics. I took 2 electronics classes in college and started putting guitar pedals together, but it took too much time. It's enjoyable to build something. However, I also focus on improving my skills in coding and guitar playing, which I prioritize over working with electronics. Story 53. I'm not sure if this counts as a hobby, but I have been doom scrolling. A friend mentioned that short-form content isn't very good for you, and a few days later, I realized I had spent several hours on YouTube Shorts. I deleted TikTok right away and haven't scrolled through the Shorts tab in a few months. Story 54. Collecting stickers and designing digital labels. Selling digital labels. Collecting Funko Pops, Transformers, McDonald's Beanie Babies, and Happy Meal toys. Story 55. Full contact HEMA in fully functional, recreated medieval armor. I miss it, but it was important that I stop taking blows to the head, so I had to stop. Story 56. Honestly, most of them, if not all, are a combination of outgrowing some activities and others due to discovering a strong chance I have attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder. My latest interest is badminton, I think. I'm at a crossroads where I'm unsure whether to stop or continue. To be more honest, I should probably take a temporary break. It's frustrating since I have spent less than a year playing and invested over $1,000 into it. Story 57. I miss my freshwater nanocube aquarium with live plants and cherry shrimp. Once I stabilized it and balanced the biome, it was low maintenance and looked beautiful. All I had to do was trim the plants back occasionally. The shrimp ate the algae and the occasional bit of blanched cucumber. Then I made the mistake of adding neon tetras because I love their iridescent color. It became much more challenging with feeding, cleaning, and weekly water changes. When I finally had to move, I euthanized the fish and shrimp, tossed the plants in the garbage, and put the nanocube into storage. I tried bringing it out with the hopes of starting a new planted cherry shrimp tank, but I just could not find the motivation. Story 58. Collecting SAK knives has become too much of an investment for me. Personally, any other toolkit can provide similar functionality for a lower cost. Story 59. Collecting and restoring early arcade machines was enjoyable, but it took up an entire room, and my house often smelled like burnt electronics. I eventually priced myself out of the hobby as costs soared in the early 2000s. However, I made a significant profit on my collection. Story 60. Building model airplanes and ships like the older plastic and balsa wood kits that you could then decorate and paint. I had about 30 complete models, but I think they all ended up in the trash. Story 61. I built model cars throughout high school. As time went on, my projects became more ambitious. Finally, I constructed a 1955 Corvette and customized every part of the car, adding an incredible amount of detail. A few months later, I accidentally bumped into the shelf where the car was sitting. It fell to the floor and was smashed into pieces. That was more than 40 years ago. I have not built another model since. Story 62. Radio-controlled car racing. I had quite a few 1/10 touring cars, 1/12 pan cars, 10th scale buggies, and 8th scale nitro buggies and trucks. I had a real knack for it too. However, it became quite expensive, so now I play golf. Story 63. Graphic design and motion graphics. The struggle to break into the industry and secure a job in the field, due to high competitiveness, diminished my enthusiasm and even the joy of creating for fun. Story 64. Reading has become challenging for me since I stopped. It is now difficult for me to concentrate when reading, and doing something physical is much easier for me. Story 65. I do not have hobbies in the traditional sense, but I enjoy participating in conversations and assisting with various topics. Story 66. Drawing and art, writing to some extent, struggling but staying consistent with gardening. I force myself to use my phone for photography, so I am at least doing it somewhat. I also practice archery, though it lasted about 5 minutes, and I am learning languages. Story 67. Sport parachuting and then paragliding. A fortune teller told me I was going to die if I continued, so my wife, who was present, made me sell everything and give it up. I must say that the fortune teller predicted many other things as well, and everything was completely accurate, so I will give her the benefit of the doubt. Story 68. Writing has been a passion of mine since I was young. I have countless stories, worlds, characters, and plots constantly flowing through my mind. I gave up years ago because I lacked the determination to stick to one story. The extensive planning, character development, and months of research to get everything right didn't suit me, and I would often create another story that I found more interesting than the last. Now, I only imagine these stories to myself at night, as it helps me fall asleep more easily. Story 69. Being creative offers no financial gain for me, so it makes little sense to spend my time on it. Story 70. I do housework, run errands, and try to maintain my personal relationships. That's basically all I have the energy for. Instead of pursuing hobbies, I consume entertainment by watching TV and movies, listening to music, reading books, and playing video games. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.